doing the things you will be doing when you've reached your goal. Don't let the fear of the time it will take to accomplish something stand in the way of you doing it. The time will pass anyway. We might as well put the passing time to the best possible use. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. Our environment, the world in which we live and work, is a mirror of our attitudes and expectations. My brothers and sisters, I hope that you've heard these words of wisdom, and I pray today that you, through every day, that you would wake up and seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, that all these things will be added unto you, and they will. But you must believe. You must believe in the living God, but you must also believe that he has given you the power to get wealth, but you have to get it the way that he has ordained you to get it, and he has called you to serve, because he wants you to know that he loves you and that he has given you every gift, talent, skills, and ability that you need to be successful in this world. And remember, there's a way out of your mess, and it's JESUS.
Where can you buy a brand new Nissan with a lifetime warranty? Kingston Pike. Hey, folks, Gerald Anderson with Ted Russell Nissan. You heard it right. Every new Ted Russell Nissan comes with a lifetime warranty, and that's a long, long time. Ted Russell Nissan on Kingston Pike.
Good morning and welcome to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Ask Your Neighbor can also be heard and seen on our website, WYSHradio.com. And if you are in Anderson, Rome, or Morgan County and have Comcast cable, you can watch Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV Channel 12. Ask Your Neighbor is the program where you call in and do just that. Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a comment? Do you have a problem? Or do you have a question? Then call in and ask your neighbor. 865-457-1380 or toll free at 877-711-4005. And for those of you that might be listening or watching on the internet, you can email from our website, WYSHradio.com. Just click on the Contact Us button and email your questions. Now sit back and listen as listeners throughout East Tennessee and the entire world answer your questions on Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV 12 and AM 1380 WYSH.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic day today. It's nice of you to join us. One of my favorite school administrators in the whole world. I was telling people yesterday when I was telling them you were coming on here, and I said, nobody needs to tell us how good the Clinton school system is. You guys don't need to toot your own horn, because those of us that have had kids in it, we know firsthand, and I certainly am not throwing off on the county schools, but such a huge difference coming from the Clinton City schools, and then when they go into the county schools. The county schools are so much bigger, and that has a lot to do with it. But I'm just really grateful. I told you before, I wish we could push the 12 through, or K through 12 through ASAP.
You wouldn't want me dealing with high school kids. Not my area.
I just, you guys do such a great job, and our city is blessed to have the school system that we have, and the folks that you have working under you, and you doing it. It really is a great thing, and people talk about our city growing, and it has a whole lot to do, I think, with our city school system. So congratulations with that and all the success that you're having.
Thank you. Definitely it is a jewel.
Yes.
But it's certainly, it starts from many levels. We've got a community that supports us.
Mm-hmm.
City council supports us. We have a wonderful school board that shows up, and they don't make decisions based on what school they serve. They make decisions based on kids.
Yes.
And so, I'm fortunate. I say that I wouldn't do it for any other district because of just the cohesiveness and how everybody surrounds and just supports children. And I think that's one of the key foundations of our success.
I think it has a whole lot to do with you being from here. I really do. And I don't mean that to sound cliquish or whatever, but I just think that when you've been here for 30 or 40 years or what have you, you have a desire for the goodness of the community. So, I mean, and man, what better could you do to make a community great than inspire their children to be great?
Yeah, it's an honor. Of course, I grew up in Clinton and was a product of Clinton City Schools. And so, to be able to come back and lead and, walk through the halls of where I used to eat my little peanut butter sandwiches in the cafeteria is just an amazing experience.
I know you guys know it, but teachers have so much, children are so impressed by their teachers. They go on, he was lucky enough, his science teacher at Clinton Elementary recommended him for a summer camp.
That'd be Kimberly O'Dell.
Yes. Oh, and he loves Miss O'Dell.
Amazing.
And he got to go up near D.C., Massachusetts, I can't remember, but he got to go to up there, go through this it was a STEM camp.
Yes.
He got to do that. And it inspired him, and now he's going to be an astrophysicist.
Wow.
That's what he is. He's going to UT. He's got signed up, ready to go, going to be in the band. And so a lot of that came from Miss O'Dell in science. And he will tell you that. He still remembers going up there and being in that camp. And he was one of, I don't know, it was a pretty exclusive thing that he got to go to.
Yeah, I remember him going. That was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
We were proud of that.
But the teachers are very, big deal in kids' lives. And Clinton City Schools, it's always a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have anybody walking away going, man, that was a bad situation. But,
well, I always say there's beauty in small, and I think that
true.
That definitely. I mean, we are the epitome of what a community school system looks like.
Absolutely.
And we're able to fit our staff in one room and, send a very clear message of expectations and our philosophy. And I'm one of the very few directors that literally gets to walk out my door and help dismiss kids every day. And sometimes just to get away from the politics and craziness of it,
get out of the office.
I'll look at the office and I'll be like, I just need to go see children. I need to go love on children. And so I get to go right outside and love on children.
There they are.
It's just a terrific place.
Every month, our representative, John Reagan, comes here, and since he's been coming here, I don't think there's been a time he's been here that we haven't talked about school vouchers, and a bill that he's been, I don't know if he co-authored, but he's certainly been part of it. And, on the face of it, if you just listen, it sounds like a great thing. Oh, well, if you want your kid to go here, then, we'll help with that. That sounds good. But one thing that he and I have talked about, and you and I talked about it a little bit before, you can't help one without hurting the other if they're going to, in the manner of which that they're saying to do this. And if I understand correctly, if a child leaves the Clinton City school system to go to, I guess, a private school, I don't know if is homeschooling. Is that part of the deal, too, or whatever?
Well, it depends on if you're looking at the Senate version of the bill or the House version of the bill. The House removed homeschool this past week.
Okay.
It is my understanding, and I would not go 100%, but it's my understanding that I think homeschool elements still do exist in the Senate version. Okay.
So, I mean, if you take money, if a kid left, you would still get 20% of what you get, if this is what he told me. But 80% of that would be allocated to, I guess, the private school or the parent. So,
that's not accurate.
That's not okay. Last time he was here,
we lose the funding.
You lose all of it.
Yeah, our funding is based on student membership.
That's what I thought.
And so with the new TISA formula, every child comes with a base. And I just don't even like saying this because you can't equate children with money. I don't like even talking about this, but you got to have money to run a school system. And so they come with a base, and then depending on if that child, receives special services, or if they are economically disadvantaged, or if they're English language learner, there might be some additional weights that get placed on that base.
Okay.
But when that child leaves Clinton City Schools,
the money
all of that funding goes with that child, and we get nothing. We get nothing.
Okay.
So it definitely is a student-based formula.
So does it? And I'm not really playing devil's advocate, but I'm just repeating stuff that he said. So if that money is just used for that child and that child leaves, how does that money leaving hurt the rest of the school? Or is it just everybody's money in a big pile keeps the school running?
Correct. And that's a great question. TISA is a funding formula, but it is not a spending formula.
Oh.
So that is how we get our funds, but then we put that in a pot of money to serve all 3 Clinton City schools.
Gotcha.
So when they say, well, you might not even be affected, and this is one of the things that Representative Reagan said, Clinton City Schools is a great school. You're not going to be affected by this. Well, yeah, we are. I have 10 kids leave. Let's say that I have 10 kids leave and they decide to take vouchers. Mm-hmm. Then that funding goes with those kids. Well, all of those kids don't come from a 1st grade class at Clinton Elementary or a 3rd grade class at North Clinton Elementary. They're sprinkled across all schools in Clinton City Schools and across all grades.
Gotcha.
Well, I am still required to meet teacher ratios. I'm still required to meet response to intervention times. I'm required to meet these instructional, times. And so you have just removed 10 kids funding from me, but I can't let a teacher go.
Because you still are.
I still have to provide the same level of programming.
Sure.
And so, it does affect public schools.
I have, David and I are great friends, and I know you and David are great friends, and I know where he stands on this, but I don't understand when Representative, I think he's going to be here next Friday, and I will pose these questions to him. With all of our school systems, everybody in this county, every school system in the county reached out to Representative Reagan and said, hey, this is not something that we're for. I've heard from the county, I've heard from you, and I've been told that Oak Ridge, that they weren't interested in this either. But yet, why does Mr. Reagan, what did he tell you? Why is he continuing to push this when his constituents don't seem to want it? Do you know?
Well, I'll kind of back up. We knew the voucher bill was coming, and so we collectively did a joint resolution, and it was Clinton City School Board, Clinton City Council, Anderson County County Commission, Anderson County Schools, Oak Ridge City Schools, and Oak Ridge City Council. So you had 6 government bodies that collectively signed a resolution prior to the bill ever being implemented, saying that this is not what the community wants. It's not what we want for our schools. It's not what the funding body want for schools. He responded back and said that he would not be for or against anything until he saw a bill.
Yeah, he told us he said it was premature.
It was premature. Yes. So we got chastised for doing that before the bill was the
released. Bill, though, the framework of the bill, and this is what I argued with him, the framework of the bill was there when we did that, and the framework that we spoke of then is exactly what's implemented today. So although it may not have been voted on, may not have been brought, the bill, the actual framework and the nuts and bolts of it was already there.
And you're either for or you're against.
Yeah, it's one of the.
I mean, you walk in and you know whether you're for or against. So we received a formal letter from him last Friday after the bill was dropped, House Bill 1183. And it was addressed to all of us, and he wanted to know our input on it. And I don't care to quote because it was right there. He wanted to remind us that public schools did not exist as a daycare for children or as a platform for employment opportunities for people. And I personally take great offense to that.
Gosh.
Take great offense to that. But we collectively worked on a response. And so Oak Ridge City Schools and their city council, my school board and city council and Anderson County County Commission and Dr. Parrott worked on a detailed response to House Bill 1183 and basically begging him, we need your help. We need you to serve constituents in our community and your loyalty be with us versus towards the outside privatization groups that are in this. And I sat in a 4-hour subcommittee meeting and looked at him, and he voted for vouchers with Dr. Parrott and Kelly Johnson in the room. And I will have to say, I know his job hasn't been easy, and I will go on record for saying that. The amount of privatization and outside lobbying that is going on has been immense. I mean, there are billions of dollars behind this, and it is not a grassroots effort. It's in
But
Tennessee.
who benefits? If there are lobbyists, okay, are they going to get a piece of everything that goes to Grace or everything that goes to some of these private schools? What is their dog in the fight?
By golly, I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you, but they're targeting states, and they targeted Arizona. And if you look at how this played out in Arizona, we are a storybook version of how this is played out in Arizona.
Explain that to those of us that don't know.
So it starts out, it's not something that just happens. It is years of grooming. And so you have seen this happen where they started the individual education accounts for special needs kids. And then, we redid our BEP to TISA to make it student funding. We do letter grades in an effort to try to make public schools look like they're failing kids. And so all of these things play. And then you start it in your urban areas and say that it's going to be a pilot. And the pilot data, actually, Commissioner Reynolds herself in a Senate hearing committee said the results are nothing to write home about.
So it's not doing good.
The pilot program is saying the results are not, but we're going to expand it and spend $144 million more on something that hasn't yielded to be beneficial. And so, for those who are listening, on the surface, you have to really, really dig deep to understand the damage of vouchers. So basically what that voucher would do is give families a little over $7,000 that they could use towards going to private school. It doesn't have to be used for tuition. It can be used for transportation. It can be used for school uniforms. It can be used to purchase a computer equipment to help with educational needs. And the problem is that they're saying that this is parental choice. So let's break that down.
Okay.
Right now the parental choice exists. And we want to be very, very clear that this is not public versus private war. I mean, we have kids. There are great private schools in our community. And honestly, private schools, they serve students well. Homeschool. We've got some homeschool kids whose parents do a great job at homeschooling. We've got some that don't, but we do have a subset that do.
Sure.
So we as public school officials completely respect the parents' right to choose. However, when it's broken down, when they say parental choice, you should have a choice to take this money and go to private schools. Let's talk about private schools. They choose their students.
True.
They don't have to take all students.
True.
They don't have to give TCAP. They don't have to teach state standards. They determine everything about their program. That's why they're private. They don't want government control.
Exactly.
And so when I look at vouchers, what it's doing is it's serving two sets of people. It's serving your set of people who can already afford private, because Governor Lee has made it very, very apparent, and it is in the bill, that if you attend a private school, you can get a voucher. So you can, if you already attend a private school, then you can get this pot of money.
Where does that money come from? Because nobody's getting it right now.
Exactly.
Because they're not moving it from Clinton City or Anderson County. It doesn't exist. So
and if you look at Arizona, 75 to 80% of your students who are taking advantage of vouchers already attended private school to begin with.
So that's just money they've had to pull out of.
You've got to find it from somewhere. You've got to find it from somewhere. The second pot of money that it is, or second type of person that benefits, is someone who may not be able to afford private school, but with the $7,000 voucher, they could pay for the gap. So we call these the gap families.
Okay.
And so you rarely are not going to find a high-quality private school for $7,000 a year.
True.
And so you have to be able to financially afford that gap.
I mean, some of these private schools are as much as college tuition.
Absolutely.
I mean, Webb is.
And so what you see is, and this is the question that I pose legislators, and they cannot answer these two questions for me. My high poverty kid that lives in a dirt floor house, and we have those in Clinton, whether you believe it or not.
I know.
Who's
I remember when ET was handing out breakfast and lunch in the summertime. Me and him talked about it every day.
They don't have electricity in their home. They come from a very, very poverty-ridden situation. Those families don't have the money to pay the gap.
No.
The vouchers aren't going to help those families at all.
No.
And then we had a director this past week. There was a panel of legislators at our TOS conference this week, and he stood up and he has a special needs child. director at a West Tennessee district, a fine man. And he said, so I have a special needs child. He can read and write. He wouldn't be proficient on a TCAP. He doesn't know how to take a standardized test and a multiple choice test, but he can read. He can do some math.
Sure.
And he said, frankly, I'm not going to let him take a TCAP test. It's not in his best interest. I'll make sure as his parent he never takes a TCAP test. And he said, so I take that voucher and I go to the private school and they deny entrance. He said, is that seen as discriminatory? And the answer of everybody was no, it's not. So if they take the voucher money, they still get to pick and choose. So you look at your special needs children, you look at your high poverty children, you look at your children with behavioral issues because they come from such dysfunction that they're just trying to make it through the day. You look at our children with our high ACE scores. You look at our most vulnerable children. This is not parental choice for them.
Somebody told me the other day, they said, we're paying in taxes. We live here. We pay in taxes. And people are saying, well, if it's my taxes and going, then it should follow my child. And lady said to me, she said, I don't have any kids in the school system. Where's my money following? Because I pay taxes that go to the school system too. If you get to take your child out and the money goes, since I don't have a child, can I have my money?
Yeah.
That I'm paying in every day?
Well, let's give a swimming pool analogy. We're getting ready to redo the JC swimming pool, which is like we've missed that for the past few years.
Yes, we have.
But is every single Clinton resident going to go and spend an abundance of time at that swimming pool? No. Some people belong to golf clubs that have swimming pools. Some people do a private membership. Some people put a pool in their backyard.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
Do they want the money back that we're going to put for that swimming pool?
Yeah.
My love of public education, and I may get emotional talking about it, is it's very deeply ethical. So when legislators come at me that I'm just trying to protect jobs or I'm trying to protect a bureaucracy, government-run system, I take great offense to that.
Yeah.
Public education for me is the great equalizer for our nation. We serve all children. Anybody that walks through our door, we don't discriminate. And there's a place for private schools to do that. That's why they're private. And I respect that.
Yeah.
And they get to do that. But my mission is to serve all kids that walk through the door. And when government is discriminating and picking and spending millions of dollars for programs that are helping the wealthy but leaving my most vulnerable children behind. My dad, for instance, my dad was a big Clinton person as well.
Absolutely.
My dad grew up in poverty, and a lot of people don't know that my dad grew up and had to sleep with 3 sisters in the bed with no heat, no running water. He used an outhouse. They moved from house to house. His childhood would break your heart. And he always instilled in us that public education is what saved his life. So if vouchers would have existed for my father, his family wouldn't have been able to afford the gap. That would have changed nothing for them but drain the quality of education that is happening in the public sector. And, he went on and actually broke the cycle of poverty, which is why I'm sitting here today. Yeah. So if vouchers were to exist back then, I may very well not even be here. So my love for public education, I'll go head to head with anybody that says that we fail kids.
So your position is not necessarily that somebody going to private school or whatever is bad. It's that according to Arizona, 75% of those that are taking advantage of the vouchers were already in private school, so mom and dad could afford it. And the people that can't afford it, $7,000 is not going to make a difference.
No.
Again, I think I know Webb is 30. Well, it was when the boys were young because we looked at it when they came out of city schools. We considered it. But it was a lot of money, too much money.
Yeah.
And so if you don't already, let's say it's $30,000 a year, so you need to make up $23,000 even if you get the 7.
Correct.
And people that make good livings can't add $23,000.
Well, and let me tell you what's happened in Arizona, and here's where we really need to learn for how this is played out in other states. And I would do the same thing if I owned a private school. It's it's capitalism. So what happened in Arizona is the majority of those private schools have raised their tuition the exact amount of the voucher.
So mom and dad are still paying the same.
So
amount.
mom and dad, and why not? I mean, if you're in it for, I mean, think about what you could do with that. I would do the same thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
because it's capitalism.
Smart.
Yeah.
And so they raise it by that amount, take that voucher money, and then guess what? They get to build these beautiful sports facilities. They get to build anything that they want to build, and there's no accountability. There's no TCAP. There's no government oversight. And so if they're going to raise the tuition, it just doesn't serve the kids that they are claiming that it's going to serve.
I before we went on the air, I said to you, I wish that there was a way that they could, if they found a way to do it, a regulatory way where it wasn't willy-nilly, that they could provide money for, to help parents if they want to send their kids to private school, but yet not take it away from the public school education. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, just the way that it's going to be extremely expensive. Did you say how much million?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I hate to be quoted, but it seems like the first year they are dedicating $144 million,
That's
but they put guardrails in there for it to grow up to 10-20% per year. Lee has made it very apparent that he wants it to be open to everybody regardless of income. I think they've capped it right now at like 300% of the poverty. So here's a good visual for you. A family of 4 enrolls in Clinton City schools and makes $56,000-$58,000 a year, family of 4.
Gotcha.
You're not going to qualify for free and reduced lunch. You got to pay for your lunches every day.
Okay.
You don't meet the federal criteria for free and reduced lunch. A family of 4 makes $150,000 a year, and the state of Tennessee with this program is going to give you up to $14,000 to send your kids to private school.
So if you make $50,000, you can't qualify for assistance with lunch. But if you make $150,000, you can get $14,000.
We will give you $14,000 to leave the public schools.
And
when you play it out in reality, no one is going to argue. We want parents to have choice.
Absolutely.
We want parents to have choice too. But down the road, you are not going to be able to fund 2 completely separate school systems, and what it becomes is a school system of the haves and a school system of the have-nots.
Well, I in my days on this planet, I've never seen government get involved in anything that they gave money to and stayed hands off, ever.
Yeah.
So do private schools recognize that with this money soon will come strings?
I think some do. I think that's why the homeschool organization fought. I mean, ironically, the homeschool organization fought hard. They don't want any part of it.
Because they know.
They know that down the road there will be government oversight.
And even if they don't take it, if it's part of the whole plan, they'll still, if the government enacts whatever legislation, they'll still be, subject to it.
Well, it's interesting, and legislators can't answer this either, that, we're held, if you saw the amount of laws that we have to implement as public schools, and the TCAP testing, and the federal accountability, and the state accountability, and the letter grades, and the scrutiny and accountability that we are under, in HB 1183, the accountability is they're going to get a third-party vendor to do parent satisfaction surveys. And whatever test that they happen to give, they can report how the children are doing. So how do you, and this is what mind boggles me, because Republicans are usually very, very fiscally conservative. So how do you invest millions and millions of dollars on a program that you can't compare how they are doing to public schools? And Kelly's personal side note is they don't want to know, because the data from other states show that voucher kids do not outperform public school kids. So if we put an accountability system into place to where we could do apples and apples, it's going to show that that the voucher kids aren't being served any better. And they don't want to know that data, because then they wouldn't be able to fund it.
What's driving this, Kelly? What at the end of the day, what are they at least saying that they feel like the positive outcome is? I mean, if everything that you say is accurate, and I don't doubt for a second that it isn't, they've had to see this too.
Number one, it's not a grassroots effort. It is from outside of state.
So it's a lobbying, it's a business effort.
Privatization, special interest groups that have infiltrated. Let's look at what happened in Clinton just last week.
Okay.
Did you see the flyer? There was a flyer that went out.
I was told about it, but I didn't see it.
There was a flyer that was mailed out by an outside special interest group. Now, they do have an office in Antioch, but I have been told that the originators and the founders of this organization are out of Arizona.
Okay.
So not even founded in Tennessee.
Got it.
They targeted and sent flyers to the Clinton community, bashing public schools, saying that we were failing children. They don't know Clinton City Schools. They don't know my parents. They don't know my teachers. They don't know my kids. And
what criteria did they use to make such a claim?
They pulled some, I don't even remember what they used, but it was nothing with Clinton City Schools at all. But then, of course, it had Reagan's number on it, Representative Reagan's number. And so, he would tell you this too. I texted him and said, did you approve this mailing? And he said, no, I didn't. He said, anybody can put my face on anything until, say, please contact your representative. And so then we started seeing text messages. So, like, prominent people in Clinton are getting text messages from these organizations. How they get their cell phone number, that's beyond me. Text messages saying, that we're failing kids, and please send, your Representative Reagan that you want to vote for school choice. Well, there again, it's not about school choice.
Sounds good
yes.
Yeah.
But you watch, you mark my word. Now that Reagan has voted yes for vouchers. I even saw this as I was scrolling through Facebook, because they've done the boost or whatever on Facebook. They're now targeting a different representative because they got what they wanted out of Representative Reagan. And so it is, I think that our politicians, and I don't know enough about politics, but there's so much money behind this, and so much, it's kind of Lee's agenda, and he is pushing that agenda onto representatives. I think there's a lot of pressure. I mean, I do feel sorry for Representative Reagan, because there is no doubt that there is a lot of pressure for him to answer to outside people versus us.
It's like we said, though. I mean, like I said, everybody voted yes for chickens but David, because people said David don't. And David just, it might be the minority, but if the minority speaks to him and says, this is what we want, this is what he does, I don't understand why anybody that's elected, and you're elected by the people of this area, it doesn't matter if we're wrong. If that's what we want, then that's your job. It's not your job to school us or to tell us. It's your job to represent us. And so I don't, for the life of me, whether if you agree with them or not, if the majority, the school system, and the people that are involved in it have a legitimate opinion about it, and they come to you and say, hey, here's the entire school system, you represent us.
Well, I had a conversation with Representative Reagan after the vote, and I wish, you're obviously upset that has happened, and he mentioned to me, I received more emails telling me to vote yes than no. And my first response was, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. And I should have reworded it a different way. Do I think that he got more for yes than no? I do believe with all of the outside lobbyists,
but not
and
from his
happened,
constituents.
But I would love to know the breakdown of Anderson County residents who told him to vote no. And there's just not the desire there. And when it is deeply ethical for me, and when I see the dirty politics that are playing out, it is just, it becomes very emotional for me, because you're messing with my most vulnerable kids.
Sure.
And that is, will it affect Clinton City Schools next year? We'll be okay. But is it going to change the landscape overall of public education in the state of Tennessee to the detriment? 100%.
What about this third grade test? I was really at a quandary with this. We test kids third grade, you meet this mark or you're held back. That was the first thing. I know they've tweaked it a little bit, and you guys as teachers didn't even have the authority to initiate a contact with the parent to say, hey, the parent had to contact you guys to ask for a do-over on the test at the original writing of this. I think they've changed it a little bit. But it sounded to me, and I've heard this echoed, since we talked about it here, and I've heard it now coming from other states too. If they're not, reading by the third grade, going to be in poverty their whole life or what have you. What has happened with that? Where do we stand on that? I know that you guys were struggling with the testing and stuff as well, but where are we at with that?
Whew. Now you're opening up a whole nother pot.
Well, that bothered me because I don't understand that, because I'll tell you, I've got twin boys. You know them.
Yep.
One learns completely different than the other one.
Yep.
James David does things a certain way, and Jacob is diametrically opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob's not really good at taking tests. James David can ace them, you know. So, but Jacob's got tons of stuff he's good at. James David's not. So, if you put both of those boys in a the same exact format and said go, one might do tremendous and one might do awful when they both are very good students. You know that. They just have to learn different. So that was my argument. And they didn't have an answer for it. It's just oh, well, statistically. But how do you do that? How do you, as an educator, when you've got what happens if a kid's involved in domestic violence at home when they come to school?
Absolutely.
They might be the smartest, most brilliant human being in the school, but if they've got that weight on them that we don't know, they're sure not going to perform under pressure. How has that affected us, and what are we doing to that, and what's going on with that whole thing?
Well, it's a little bigger issue, and we're not the only state that deals with this, but we put an awful lot of emphasis on a multiple choice test given at one point in time that the state spends millions and millions of dollars for a third-party vendor to administer. And, this will get into my philosophical statement, but our children are so much more complex than a test score.
I agree.
They're more complex if they can adequately choose whether, the answer is A, B, C, or D. Mm-hmm. That's given in one point in time. And so we've put a lot of stock into that, and that was the pushback that we gave about the third grade. Let's call it what it is. It was a retention law, and then they wanted to change and say it's a pathway to promotion law. But we were taking that one test, and I wish you could see the amount of stress that placed on my 9-year-old babies, my parents. We sat in the office and cried with parents
whose kids were going to be held back.
To death. The anxiety that
that's what I heard,
that was associated with this test. And so yes, we worked hard with our parents, and our parents worked hard with us. And I think we ended up retaining one last year because the parents, either did summer school or we got them into the tutoring and got them into the pathways that they needed. But the thing that's burning our house down now is, at least with third grade, there are pathways that the parent can take for promotion.
Yes.
But in that law was written a little caveat that said then when they go on to fourth grade, they must meet adequate growth in fourth grade or they will be retained in fourth grade.
So they just moved it. They just moved the pylon to fourth grade.
So this tells you kind of what we're dealing with. So the formula for adequate growth, now these are already fourth graders that are taking the TCAP starting on April the 16th with us, was just approved by the state board a few weeks ago. So we just now got the formula for what adequate growth is going to be.
But that was implemented prior.
This law has been in place for 2 or 3 years?
Going on 3.
And so when you look at that adequate growth, literally you have to take a score, minus it by 50, divide it by all of this. It's like this convoluted formula that I even have to put my head and think about. So how in the world are parents? And so we look at the State Department and we say, so how do we prepare? How do we track this throughout the year to see if our kids are on track to meet this adequate growth score? Well, we don't know because it's not played out yet.
So we don't have a step up to make sure we're doing the right thing. We just come to the wall, take the test,
and so the position, unless the law changes, now there is an appetite, unless the law changes, we have a group of kids that we will not know until July 1st if they met this magical adequate growth number and can go on to 5th grade.
Oh, my Lord.
And as the law stands
so they'll leave school in May.
You know what they'll do? They'll leave school in May and take a voucher.
That way they can go where they want, if they want.
And then they get to go to private school, and private school doesn't have to adhere to any of those rules.
That's crazy. As a state, I think I was looking somewhere last week. Are we about 33 out of the 50 states as far as our education? Where are we as a state?
We're one of the worst funded.
Okay.
But we are kind of in the middle of the pack.
That's what I thought.
Middle of the pack.
And so when they talk about this, third grade test and whatever, they say that if we are proficient then we will be better up the chain, fourth, fifth, all the way, and therefore the quality of our schools will seem better or look better. If they're like it's like magic. If it's okay in the third grade, it's going to be okay till 12th grade. But I don't necessarily adhere to that. I mean, if we're in the middle of the pack right now, I don't necessarily think holding some kids back in third grade, or I don't know that that's going to make a difference in the overall state school system, which is what they seem to be saying, that if they can fix it right there in third grade, everything's going to be okay thereafter.
Well, listen to what they're really saying. We believe in parent choice. Parents should be able to choose whatever school that they go to. But if you attend a public school, you have no say-so and if your child is retained or not when it comes to third and fourth grade.
And neither do the teachers.
Neither do the teachers. The government is going to decide that.
Based on a formula that
based on a formula, based on a multiple choice test.
See, I don't agree with that whatsoever. I've said from day one, I think it ought to be left to the teachers and the educators. And if parents don't think y'all are doing your job, then that's up to us to come and, you know what I mean, and say, hey, little Johnny should pass this. He knows this, or whatever. I don't know. I've never been comfortable with anything where an outside source says, here's the carte blanche way we're going to do it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the child's circumstance is. It doesn't matter what their learning process is. You hit this mark or you fail.
The people who are making these decisions have no idea the clientele of kids that public education.
And where are why is the state of Tennessee's public school systems not coming? I mean, how many thousands of teachers do we have that vote in this state? And you would think, if they all are as passionate as you, that every legislator is hearing about this.
Oh, every legislator is hearing about this, and they're having to choose. Am I going to answer to my constituents, or am I going to answer to people who are paying money?
Well, I will promise you this. I know this as well as you do. I promise you, if the majority of people in Anderson County are not for this, then our state legislator will change. John Reagan won't be there. I mean, and I don't mean that. I'm just saying, if you don't do what you're supposed to do or what people want you to do, they'll change. Yeah. We've seen that over and over and over. So I ask this, what's the end game? I don't get the end game. If they do all of this and kids get to go to private school, are they doing it to make constituents happy, mom and dad happy? Are they doing it because they think it'll better educate the kids? Are they doing it because they want a tighter grip on public education? I just don't see any positive end game. Right. Outside of this. I will tell you this. I do like, again, when you've got parents that are dedicated and homeschooling and whatever, and they're already doing that, I think that the money would be a help to them. I don't doubt that at all. So I can see where people that are in the midst of it, or that do send their kids to private school, will say, that'll help, $7,000 will go a long way to help doing this. Absolutely. So I can see why people would be for it if they've had to take their kid if they've taken their child out of public education for a specific reason, So I understand the argument for it. I just think that people need to know all of it.
You got to just dig a little bit deeper, because on the surface, it will benefit a few. I mean, let's call it what it is. It will benefit a few. And unfortunately, the people that it will benefit are the ones who have the means to lobby, to advocate, to contact legislators. My most vulnerable kids don't even have running water in their house. This is not going to be the person that's going to reach out to a legislator. Yeah. And so that is what we have been charged to do. We have to advocate on their behalf.
I think, too, we're spoiled here because not all municipalities have the quality of school that we do at Clinton City, and that's just the truth. So we look at it and we say, what's wrong with you? Why would you pick up a sleeping baby? Why are you going to mess with one of the top 5 schools in the state or what have you? Because we've got that. But there probably are places that are dropping the ball in education.
Well, and it already exists. I mean, it exists in 3 of the metro, in 3 of our most urban areas in Tennessee. So let that play out.
They've already got that.
Let it play out, and let's see what the data says. If the data shows If you are comparing apples to apples and the data shows that kids are better off with vouchers, I'll be the first that will be for it, because I just want what's best for all of my babies.
That's right. Representative Reagan said, right now we've got a mechanism in place. If a school is not performing or there's an issue, you can petition to get funding for choice right now, right?
Yes.
So if there's a problem and there's a reason that your child can't or shouldn't or whatever go to public, there's a mechanism at this moment, right? Or is it just those
right
few
now
school
the vouchers
systems?
are just in, so it would be Shelby County, Metro Nashville, and Hamilton.
Would a just popped in my head, would a reasonable, I guess, would it be reasonable if they came to the point and they said, well, we won't make it universal, but we'll make it case by case, like they're doing in those areas? If they said, if your child has
if you're a failing school,
they're doing it as a failing school now, as opposed to a parent having a issue.
They are. That's not what's in the That's
Gotcha.
not what is in the bill. It would be open to everybody, whether you're high performing or low performing. And this was this played out during that 4-hour committee meeting this week. Representative Reagan asked Lizette Reynolds, who is our current Commissioner of Education, who has never been in public education. She's not certified to teach, and she's worked for Excel Ed and for privatization of public education her career.
And that's
who Lee brought in, and it's a well-known fact. He brought her in to push this voucher legislation through. That's why she's here. She'll tell you that.
Okay.
And I mean, she's a lovely lady. We very philosophically disagree, but she's a nice lady. He asked her in committee meeting. He said, I've got 3 very quality public schools in my district. Is this voucher bill going to hurt them? What is she going to say?
No.
She's going to say no. Of course she's going to say no. And that is what he said to me. You heard her, Kelly. This isn't going to hurt you all.
If 10 kids leave our system, what is that? That's what, $70,000 to $100,000 that leaves our
$7,000 to $10,000 per kid.
Yeah, $70,000 to $100,000 out of the school.
And so you're looking at 2 teachers that I can't afford to pay anymore, but yet I'm having to continue the same level of programming. And so I question, are we believing an outside of Tennessee person who doesn't even have a teaching degree? I like her as a person, but she doesn't have a teaching degree and clearly is trying to push privatization. Are you going to trust her to take care of Clinton City schools? Are you going to trust someone who was born and raised, who would lay down her life for those kids? If I'm telling you that in the end it's going to hurt us, it baffles me why you wouldn't believe the people that you serve.
And I think that's what it all comes down to. That's at the end of the day, it's going to be an issue that I don't think it's going to play out well.
Well, and I was told that, if we agree on 80% of things, then we're 80% friends, not 20% enemies. But there are some issues, as my daddy said, if you don't stand for something, what will you fall for?
Yeah.
And I will stand up loud and proud for every single one of my kids that attend Clinton City schools and public education across the state of Tennessee.
And so what do you see? It looks like the light at the end of the tunnel is a train, and it's coming through, like it or not.
Yep.
So let's move forward. How do we deal with it? How are you going to plan? Or how will you even know to plan? I mean, you don't know today if little Johnny's coming back for 4th grade or 5th grade, or if he's going to private school.
Yeah.
You won't know till July if little Johnny gets to move out of 4th grade or not.
Yeah.
So how do you plan and budget going forward?
It's good. That remains to be seen. I wish I had a crystal ball. I'll tell you what's happening in Arizona.
Okay.
In Arizona, you're seeing schools shut. You're seeing public schools and local community schools shut. But you're seeing now an uprising when they've got a huge deficit in their budget because they can't afford what they promised to do. And so I think what you will see there, this is Kelly, and I don't know a lot about politics, but I think you will see the pendulum switch. I think the people who have bought into this Kool-Aid and have supported representatives who have run and they have implemented this, I think you're going to see the pendulum switch. And people.
Well, if the state is losing money and the parents at schools are closing, and you would think that it would just be natural that they would go like, all right, we need to take a second look at this and reverse it, fix it, whatever they need to do, and then we get the benefit of their trial and error, or we should, right? We should be able to look and say, all right, this didn't work there.
Right. Unfortunately, and this is another director stated this very eloquently, the reason they want to push it through right now is there's not a whole lot of data out there. Not many states have done universal vouchers, and Arizona has, and it has been a disaster. Mm-hmm. And they have put, I will say, they put a few more guardrails in what is in that HB 1183 than what Arizona has, but it still is not the guardrails it needs to be. But they want to push it through, because if we wait and see how it plays out in other states, we're going to have the data right there that says we shouldn't be doing it.
I ask you this, what is the end game?
I wish I knew, because it's not about parental choice. It's not about the smoke screens that they are saying, because it is not parental choice. It is school's choice.
You would think anybody, any common sense person would say, okay, they're doing it over there. Let's stand back for a minute and see what happens. And then if they're having bad results out of it, we don't have to weather it if somebody else is weathering it. If they fix it and it works great, okay. But if they don't, okay too. I mean, I don't understand that.
They're pushing back and saying, well, this is first year. You can't undo the damage that public education has done to children in 1 year. And so we need to give this. Well, let's do that. Give it in the 3 urban areas. Give it 5 years. And let's see what the data shows. And if the data shows that it's successful, we'll all jump on board.
Sure.
But they don't want to do that because the data in the other states show that it doesn't. It doesn't. You don't outperform public schools.
Our state is growing. Our state is growing leaps and bounds. So when I hear people talking about, we need to fix our public education as a calling card, I don't necessarily buy that. I think you guys always strive to do better in education. I don't know anybody that's, in the teaching profession that doesn't have a desire, to do better. So I keep saying it. I know it sounds stupid. I just don't understand what what the end result that they're gunning for. Better schools to invite people to the state, bring more business to the state, better schools just because we produce better kids. I don't know. It just seems like you've already got, I said this before, I pick up a sleeping baby. You've already got schools in place. If there's fixes that need to be made, why not make them within the system that you have that we're doing if they need to fix something?
And how do you look at that SPED parent? How do you look at that parent of a poverty child and say, we're investing all of this money into education for a few, but not for you. Some people deserve parent choice, but not all.
Yeah, you can't.
I mean, how do you ethically lay your head down at night, knowing that public education serves all and this does not?
Do they think that is it their mindset that $7,000 will educate somebody on the private sector? I mean, do they have, surely to Pete, they got tuition rates. You know what I mean? I don't know if, again, I've only looked into 2 private schools, and we chose to leave our children in public school. I did. But, I don't know anywhere that tuition for a year is $7,000.
It's hard for me to answer questions on what are they thinking because none of it makes any sense. I mean, I don't know. And I don't know how you justify it, and I don't understand all of the backdoor politics and all the pressures that they're getting. I'm a very simple person, and so to me, if you are elected, you represent your people. You don't represent outside organizations. You don't represent, you don't answer to the governor. You don't answer to anybody but your constituents.
Exactly.
But I also am smart enough to know that's not the way that plays out in Nashville.
But why? Again, in Nashville, they don't have a dog in the fight as to whether or not John Reagan comes back next term. Me and you do. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand anybody that goes into government and whether it's a lobbyist or whatever that lets the tail wag the dog, because when you come home, we are who decide who goes to represent us, In
my very simple mind, that's the way that it works.
It is the way.
You've got them that they get down there and you're seeing people stripped off committees. You're seeing them taken off as their chair if they don't do exactly what Governor Lee wants them to do. And I don't know that it's just a Governor Lee thing. I think it's politics in general. And so, you're left to answer the question, am I going to do what's right, even if there's a consequence? or am I going to do what needs to be done for me to maintain my level of respect in Nashville? I don't know.
You know, the easy way to do it is, I would say, I'm going to yield the people that are in this business. I'm gonna yield to our educators and the people that, you know what I mean? I would pass the buck if I had to, in order to do what people. I would say, I'm not an educator, but she is and he is, and so I'm going to side with what they say. And if you're mad at me, well, I'm serving them. And you know what I mean? Then I don't know. It just seems, I'm like you, it seems common sense to me.
It does seem common sense, but that's in my very simple mind. I am not the smartest person in the world, but in my simple mind.
It's probably why I'm not a politician, too.
Listen, and this is not an area that I enjoy. I mean, I enjoy being with my children, with my teachers. The politics side is not what I enjoy, but unfortunately, it's what impacts what happens with our children.
Basically, you're flying blind for a little bit.
Yes.
And how long is it going to take before you think you kind of can get an idea, a sense of your kids, who's going forward, who's not?
Well, honestly, what we don't see is we don't see a big flight out.
Oh, you're not going to. I don't think it'll hurt Clinton City Schools. I don't.
What's going to hurt is when that pot of money gets so big that they can no longer pump additional money into TISA for teacher raises, for
they need it over here
because they're going to need it over here. That's where I anticipate it will impact Clinton City Schools the most, because I'll put Clinton City Schools up against anybody. I just will. And so might we lose a few people? We might. I mean, but I don't think that aspect is going to affect us as much as what it does when it opens statewide. Now, rural districts, first of all, there's not the private school demand. Let's call it what it is. Our private schools aren't begging for our public school kids. They're just not. And so right now we don't have the private schools. And they did put a caveat in the bill that said that you had to be an accredited private school for 3 years before you could be eligible for voucher money. So you'll just see more private schools being created. But we have to be real careful. It's kind of like I'm very careful who I let in my buildings for use of facilities, because once you open it up for one person to come and use the facilities, you can't discriminate. You can't open it up. So this question got asked by a representative in the committee. So let's just say, I'm a good old Southern Baptist girl. I was raised in the First Baptist Church. And so, preacher's daughter. So am I going to have a lot of issues with my own taxpayer money going to Grace Baptist? No, theologically, we're pretty much in line. And, even the Catholic school, we all love Jesus. Yeah. So, but let's play it out. Let's play it out down the years where all of a sudden 3 years have gone by and now we have an accredited satanic school. We have an accredited Muslim school. We have an accredited radical terrorist school.
How are they going to?
The door's open. Our taxpayer money is going to that too. So be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, when I was talking to Russell, he comes on once a month. He and I were talking about the Satanic Club, and he said, be careful, because they could be positioning, angling, so that if we shut that down, then they can shut down, Dragons for Christ. And then, he said, so we got it's one of those situations that you've got to be careful with. And so you're right. If we can't discriminate against any of them, and if it's government money, they have to fund it the same.
And it was
supposedly
interesting. A fella that was there with one of the privatization groups said, one of the reasons we left, Shelby County was because this satanic group, came in and, was allowed to be. And I thought, well, down the road, it's going to be the same thing. Your taxpayer money could be going towards that. Now, is it a radical view? Yes. Do I really think? But you have to consider the possibility, because there was never a day that I thought a satanic group would come into a public school.
I was getting ready to say, what's the difference in starting a school and coming into the public schools? Yeah. They go to the private school. It's not a far jump.
It's not going to happen, but it's really not a far jump. And would it happen next year? No. But if they could somehow maneuver a 3-year accreditation, it would be here. Yeah. And so you just have to be very, very careful opening up the door and what we ask for here.
So you think the programs are doing in the urban areas right now, where they're trying this, you'd think we just need to pump the brakes, stop, and see how that works for those kids, and then come back to the table and say, instead of making it across the board for everybody, say, here's what happened in Shelby County, here's where it did good, here's where it did bad. And why are they against doing that, taking a few minutes to look at our own? I mean,
they want to rush it through, and I can't answer the question to why, what behind politically is happening for them to rush it through. But when you look at the general stance of the supermajority of Republicans wanting to be fiscally conservative, why wouldn't you, before you pump millions and millions of dollars into a program, want to see your return on investment? Why wouldn't you want to play that out for 5 years and see what happens?
Too, the people, we said this earlier, but I mean, when you start pulling the layers back, there's a whole lot more to it. But just on the surface, you hear parental choice, and if you choose that your child goes here, we'll take that money from the public and get over here. And there are a lot of people that go, yeah. Heck yeah, that's right. That's my money. It's my. And on the face of it, I mean, it sounds like the American way. So, but your contest is there's a whole lot more to it than just
so
that.
Much deeper than
and
what
people,
they're saying.
and I think if people, that's one of the reasons I wanted David to get you up here. I think if people hear it. Because I'm for choice to a certain degree, but I also am a product of our city school system, or my children are. So I under no circumstances do I want to see that messed with at all, because I get it, So I wanted to know, I wanted to hear from you. I've heard from John, and I think we all have, but I wanted to know what our issues were going to be down the road if this goes through, and it seems like it's going, one way or another.
It's headed somewhere.
So you're
we're certainly not being listened to. I can tell you that.
Have you talked to other educators across the state?
Yes.
And where do they come in?
There is 146 school districts in the state of Tennessee, and 140 school districts have taken a stand against this.
Out of 146, 140 have taken it up.
Everyone.
Oh, all of them.
All of them. All of them. All of them.
That's like going to put out a fire and not asking the fireman. You know what I mean? It's like, why in the world would they not take our? I know what their position is. You said it before we went on. Well, it's not. You guys just want the protection of the government money to grow careers and whatever. Which is
that was so offensive.
Yeah.
That was so offensive to my hardworking teachers.
I've said this: teachers don't make enough money anyway to deal with what they deal with. I've got 3 kids. I got 3 boys and a stepdaughter, and I promise I have a hard time dealing with 4. I couldn't deal with 400.
They're better for us than they are for you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. My people talk about how well behaved and sweet my boys are. Like you don't know them when they're home.
You think about what's happening, and they're going to sell it. I mean, let's call it what it is. They're marketing school choice.
But I don't get it.
But the bottom line is there's so much deeper, and the claims that they are saying are just inaccurate. If it is school choice, it should be school choice for all. If it is so they can have a better education, then let's put supports into place to make sure we're measuring apples to apples to make sure we're getting a return on our investment. And none of that exists.
And if they don't have a state criteria to follow, how will they even measure at the end of the day if it's working or not?
They can't, and they'll tell you that. They can't. It will be by a third-party vendor, parent satisfaction, and whatever data the private school wants to give.
I for the life of me, and a week from today, I'm going to try and get a lot of answers to this when John's here, but I don't understand it. The state of Tennessee is a red state. They have no reason, as far as politics, the legislature, the executive branch, they don't need a big thing to secure, the livelihood of the party. It's not like they're going to lose, any races if this doesn't go through. It's not like they're going to gain seats if it does. I mean, it's already, So I just, for the life of me, can't figure it out. Again, on the face of it, it sounds like you're woo for the people, where you decide, Mom, But you're going to...
Are we trying to build, are there certain people that are trying to build a bigger national resume for something beyond Tennessee?
Well, there you go.
Now, listen, I don't know a lot of politics. Don't quote me as that being fact. I'm just saying that is what a lot of people are saying. And I just think it gets very, very damaging. And this is in my simple little Clinton mind. When you start answering to people that aren't in your own community and answering to people that are bigger than your state.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, your loyalty has to be with your people. Your loyalty has to be in protecting your state. Your loyalty has to be in protecting our most vulnerable kids. That's what we do in public ed.
Do you think that sometimes people get out and away from the reality of some of our kids being in poverty, and they just don't see it or don't think it?
If you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there. I don't think that it is intentional. I think that we are very privileged. You know, if I didn't see it every day, and every year when we do our Rotary Christmas party and when we deliver Thanksgiving baskets, the community members are always amazed. I never knew this existed in my town. Yeah. I never knew that this even existed. Yeah. And so you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. But you learn by spending time in the public schools, learning about us before you judge us. See what we deal with when we walk through the door and see how we love them and take care of them on so many levels. It may not always show on a multiple choice standardized test once a year.
But it's there.
But how we are impacting them. Miracles happen every single day. And you don't know what you don't know until you come and you learn. And a lot of those legislators have not come into our buildings to truly learn what we do. They're looking at one little test and making lots of assumptions.
Have you had the opportunity to speak like just with regular citizens that maybe were for choice and they talked to you about it, why they thought it was good? And have you had anybody on that side of the fence talk to you that had a reasonable argument for it?
I have not, because I really haven't talked to anybody that once they understand the issue, really, once they truly understand it, push back.
You know, like if we were in Shelby County, I might argue with you. I might say, you know what, I want it. I don't want my kid going here, you know. But at the same time, it's like you said, like, I looked at putting my kids in private school. Yeah. If I'd have wanted to, if it had been what I thought was best, I probably would have done it. So I do have choice. They do have choice in Shelby County too, I'm sure, if they can afford it. But here,
so that's a conversation if you have a failing school.
Yeah, so
if you have a failing school and you want to open it up to failing schools, or if you want to narrow it, but to do universal.
Yeah. And it would seem like if you took the failing schools and made it available there, and you bettered those students, maybe lessened the pupil-teacher ratio or whatever, you might even help the failing school to be better while those kids go on to be better, which in turn makes the whole system better. Yeah. Okay.
I still say you need the data. You need the data to play out in the 3 urban areas. And legislators will push back and say, but we don't know how it works in rural areas. Well, if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That is not a justifiable, comeback on, in my opinion. I just think it's fiscally responsible to let that play out and see exactly, is it beneficial for kids.
But you're going to be saddled with budgeting and running the schools and trying to keep our level of education and excellence at the point that it is being a little bit hamstrung, aren't you?
Absolutely, 100%. And no one can look and say that this will not hurt public education. There again, there's another smokescreen and a marketing tool. This is a separate pot of money. No, it's not. When our kids leave, we lose funding. It's a membership base. And when you have to put more and more money into this voucher, you don't have money to put into public education. You can't do both.
Maybe we could talk to City Council and get them to give you a little bit of a marketing budget. I'm not kidding. I'm really not joking. I mean, but to educate the parents that might be considering taking them out, really and truthfully, it's going to be a level move if you're moving from our city schools. Our city schools are par with any private school. I don't. The issues that I've had, like with public schools, like I went to an event. I can't remember earlier in the year, and as I was walking into the middle school, there was a group of kids. And the way that they were talking and the language that they were using was, and there were teachers arm's length. And I asked an administrator, and they said, we're picking our battles these days. I don't prefer my kids to be around that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I can see some problems, but that we don't have that problem in our elementary school system. I know exactly.
They won't get a piece of me if they are.
That's what I'm saying. So we don't have those issues in the elementary school system. I think that it would be wise that our parents, if there was a marketing campaign or something, that parents know that there's no reason to move your children out of our elementary school. I could see people maybe as it gets older, but I don't see the need for it at all. And again, I feel very happy to talk about it because I've put 3 kids through it. And I know you do. Is there anything else that you want to tell people about it? I think we've touched all the issues.
It just is it's very disheartening. I spent a couple of days in Nashville and saw the politics play out, and I just came home very disheartened. I came home very disheartened about the future of what this will do for public schools across the state of Tennessee who serve all children. Come at me at ways that we can improve education for all children, and I'll sit down at the table and talk to you. But don't pick and choose that some children are more important than others.
Do you think
that they typically can't do that?
Do you think that went over their head, or
we've said it.
So you brought it.
When and we had a panel with the directors, and we asked those pointed questions, and they just said, "Well, you've made a good point, but my babies aren't a but." Mm-mm. It's either all. It needs to be all of them. We all need to be fighting for all of them, and the ones who are going to be left behind are the ones that need our voice the most.
Yeah.
No. You're gonna get me crying before I get off here,
No. I just, again, I'm really glad that you came up. I'm really glad that you talked about it, because on the face of it, I think a lot of people just say, "Wow, that's a great idea." Maybe they're not even going to use it, you know what I mean? But they think that's just more power and control for the parents. And on the face,
it sounds great.
Yeah.
It does. It sounds great. And all the flyers and propaganda that's hitting people's text messages and mailboxes, they make it sound wonderful. And it may be wonderful for those 2 groups of people.
Yeah.
But part of government is protecting everybody.
And see, okay, if they do that, are they still going to hold you the requirements of the 3rd grade? Because they've put all that. That's 100%. Additional to what we were having. So now we've got all that, and we're going to lose funding.
Now, HB 1183, the House is trying to push through some things, basically carrots. I call it the bait and switch bill.
Got it.
We're going to do vouchers, but in order for you to get voucher, we're going to give you this. But in order to get this, you still have to swallow the poison pill.
Okay.
And there are a few things in there that I'm not going to lie. And when Representative Reagan comes, he's going to tell you how wonderful these things are. And some of them would benefit, like Clinton City Schools would benefit from a small school weight moving from 5 to 8%. So would it give us a little bit more money? Mm-hmm. It would. But at the end of the day, you have to either, if all of these things are good for public education, why are you attaching it to this? Why would we not remove those things and give those things to public education? Clearly, it is an effort to try to buy our support for vouchers.
Gotcha.
And we are being told it's all or nothing. You either take these things and take vouchers, or you will never stand a chance of getting these things for public education. That's dirty.
Yeah.
That's dirty. If it's good for public education, it's good for kids, it should be done without us having to swallow this other pill. And so districts have taken 146 districts this week in the state of Tennessee said, anti this bill. We don't want these things if
you got to take voucher,
because our ethics are going to drive our decisions. We can't be bought.
So every school system in the state of Tennessee says no.
Yes.
And the state legislature
says yes.
How many teachers are in the state legislature? Do we know?
You know what? We've got one right now that's turned on us. It beats all I've ever seen, but I think he's being bullied down there.
Again, I'm like you. I'm just common sense. I just don't get it. I don't know how somebody in Nashville can bully you when you got to go home, and the only people really that have control of whether you go back are at home. I don't know.
I just,
maybe
and I wouldn't want that job for any amount of money. I know the pressures associated with those representatives and elected officials. I wouldn't. Politics is not my thing, but I'm a firm believer that once you sign up to do it, You sign up to represent.
I don't
the
think
least
there's
of these.
pressure. I don't think there's pressure at all. I think you come home, you say, what do y'all want to do? And everybody says yes or no, and then you go back and say, my tribe said yes.
Jag, that would be nice to have.
That's easy.
That would be so nice to have.
I mean,
you know, we have some school systems that, like, their legislators meet with them once a week on a conference. This is what's happening. How do you feel about this? How would this play out for our community? And then they actually go and vote.
So we don't have that rapport at all, do we? No.
Well, I received a letter that reminded me that public schools aren't daycare.
Yeah.
And then I was allowed
that.
to give my input. I'm going to tell you, I was allowed to give my input, but I was told there was more emails for it than against it. So I'll just let everybody make their own.
Well, I'm curious as to our listeners and what they think about it, and I'll find out. I'm sure they'll call and tell me, which is fine. I would like them to do that. I just. I'm glad you came on.
Well, and like I said, I'm one person's opinion. You know, I respect. Everybody has a right to believe what they believe, and there may be some people who are pro-vouchers that disagree with everything that I said. But what I say is coming from my heart and from what I see on the boots and ground, and it's my opinion.
Again, if I'm going to put out a fire, I'm going to take the advice of a fireman. You know, and I think that. If you were just a parent that was coming in and didn't have a knowledge of the school system, I mean, it might not carry as much weight as it does being the superintendent, you know, of our schools. So I think people take what you say seriously and listen.
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity to at least
anytime.
At least express what is going on. But at the end of the day, Clinton City Schools will wake up in the morning and will continue to love and serve kids regardless of what happens.
Sure.
So that's just what we do.
I'll just tell you at the end of the day, what will happen is if that funding ends up a detriment to the school, then the city council will have to look at just the truth, a tax increase, so as to fund the schools at the level that we've all come to expect, the excellence that we've come to expect. So people need to take that into the equation too when they're, you know, when you're for it or what have you. Just understand at the end of the day, somewhere. Keep schools going, that money will have to be made up. And the only place that you guys get money is tax dollars. You know, it's not,
right.
You know, like I said, they need to give you a marketing budget, though, so we can keep kids in schools. We'll talk to Scott about that so he can get that worked out. Thank you, Kelly, for coming in today. I really do appreciate it. Anytime. I'm going to take a break, folks. We'll let Ms. Johnson go, and then if you guys have anything that you'd like to add, I'll let you do that, or otherwise we'll wrap the program up in just a few moments.
Hi, folks. Greg, your friendly garden guy here at Willow Ridge Garden Center. You can't have spring in Tennessee without dogwoods. Here at Willow Ridge, we bring you the very best varieties to plant right now. Cherokee Brave and Cherokee Princess, and there's white or pink Coosa dogwoods. You know dogwoods bloom in pink, red, or white in April. No fooling. Go ahead, plant now. Call Willow Ridge Garden Center 865-481-3825 and get your hands dirty. It's good for you.
As a homeowner, I'm always looking for peace of mind, especially when I have a costly, unplanned expense, like a cooling system repair or replacement. That's when I turn to the eScore Quality Contractor Network. They're the pros who've been specially trained and approved by TVA and your local power company. The quality contractors are licensed and insured, so you can be assured the job will be done right and inspected for free. Contact your local power company or visit energyright.com to learn more.
Looking for a used car, but not just any used car? Are you looking for a pre-owned car that really says something? You need to check out the pre-owned cars at Mini of Knoxville. From a Bentley to a BMW, a Corvette to a Cadillac, even a Ferrari or Lamborghini. You'll find the most fabulous exotic cars at Mini of Knoxville. Not only will you find the highest line of pre-owned cars, you'll also find the all-new Mini Cooper Countryman and Clubman, as well as a wide variety of used Mini Coopers. If you've always wanted a Mini Cooper, then Mini of Knoxville is your next stop. Experience their first-class red carpet welcome and see what a difference you feel at Mini of Knoxville. Mini of Knoxville is owned by